Welcome to the Studio Chat podcast, your safe haven for self-discovery, growth, and transformation. I'm Barbara Thompson, your host. I'm a therapist and the founder of Self-Care Studio. Whether you're joining me from my private counselling sessions, my courses, or right here on this podcast, I'm dedicated to helping you reconnect with yourself and live life authentically. This podcast is your reminder to pause, reflect, and reclaim your power. Together we'll explore the messy, beautiful journey of life, from letting go of people-pleasing and overthinking to embracing your worth and stepping boldly into your true self. Here, you're not just a listener, you're part of a community that values self-trust, self-love, and living life on your terms. So whether you're navigating challenges, seeking clarity, or simply craving a dose of inspiration, you've come to the right place. Thank you so much for choosing to spend this time with me. Let's dive into today's episode and continue this journey together. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Studio Chat podcast. My name is Barbara Thompson, I'm the host, and I'm so excited about today's episode number 135 because we're diving deep into a topic that I think so many of us can relate to, and that is breaking free from unavailable people, letting go of people pleasing, and embracing the joy of saying no. Now, for the longest time, I was someone that would always be in relationships with people that were unavailable, couldn't commit. I would always people please, and I could never say no to anyone. And really, who better to explore this with than this incredible woman called Natalie Lue? And I met her way back in 2011 when I was living in New Zealand, and I found myself being attracted to someone that couldn't commit, and no matter what I was doing, I just found I was looking for the why, and that's when I found Natalie's blog and one of her books that I'm about to talk to you about. And I really think, I really can't believe that she's on my podcast today. And if you've ever been like me and you've ever found yourself being stuck in a toxic relationship patterns, bending over backwards to please others and struggling to set boundaries, this episode is for you. Natalie is the author of the Mr. Unavailable and the Fallback Girl. That's the book that I was first introduced to, and it's a book that completely changed the way I see relationships and emotional availability. It was actually one of the first books and her blog that got me investigating as to why am I the way I am? Why am I in this cycle? Why do I keep doing what I'm doing? Because it was filtering into other areas of my life. And in this episode, what we do together, Natalie and I, is we unpack why we've been caught in these cycles, how to recognize when someone is emotionally unavailable, and most importantly, I think, how to break free from this. And we talk about the power of saying no with no guilt, but from a place of self-respect and self-care. So if you've ever felt like you're always the one that's giving, waiting, or hoping for a change, this is your sign to step into your power and get nice and comfy and listen to this episode. But do you know what? Before we dive in, I really want to take this time to introduce you to Natalie before I bring her on for a chat. It's really important because this woman is just incredible. Just have a listen to what this powerful woman has done. She's a writer. So Natalie's a writer, an artist, an author, a course creator, a coach, and a podcaster whose work has been read and listened to by millions of people since she started blogging in June 2004. She helps people pleasers, perfectionists, and relationship strugglers to overcome their emotional baggage so that they become more of who they really want to be. And that really resonates with me in the work that I do with my clients. Natalie has also self-published her first 4 books. Get this, she has sold over 175,000 copies, and a mix of, I love how she writes because it's like a mix of self-help and a splash of memoir, and it just feels like you're talking to a friend. And she's always wanted her books and what she shares to be the antidote, to be, when you're in dodgy relationships, you need life advice. She's right there by your side. And she started blogging about 20 years ago after going on a bad date. And that's when she started writing baggagereclaim.com. That's how I found her. And after experiencing an awakening about her dodgy love habits and low self-esteem, she figured that it would If she could help just one person avoid what she'd been through and help them navigate out of a toxic situation, she was giving something back. Her work has gone on to help millions of people all around the world, including me, often putting a name to behavior and situations that all of us just think that we're going, like they're in our imagination. Now, Baggage Reclaim is one of the longest running self-help blogs in the world. She's also hosted her podcast, the Baggage Reclaim Sessions podcast, which has over 278 episodes and over 4.5 million downloads. And I just love that she helps. There's so many words around people-pleasing, perfectionists, overthinkers. She really helps us figure out our boundaries, where we need to have healthier relationships. She helps us with fulfilling our work opportunities and making us feel better about ourselves. And she's really authentic, and she really helps us with your yes is your yes and your no is your no. And she can really transform your life. I'm so excited. This is such a full circle moment for me today. It's a very special episode. I want you to get comfy. It was so nice of Natalie to take this time. It's a bit of a long form podcast episode today. It's a bit longer than what I normally do, but everything is like a take home, I reckon. And it's something that I want you to pass on to your friends and family, anyone that you think this episode will help. So grab your favorite drink, get nice and comfy. Let's dive in together. And yeah, I really hope you enjoy this chat, honestly, as much as I did with Natalie. Natalie, thank you so much for helping me in one of the darkest times of my life. And I'll talk more about this in the intro with you guys. You'll be able to hear that. Thank you, Natalie. And I look forward to, talking to you more. Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of the Studio Chat podcast. Now, you would have just heard in the intro why this woman is so special to me, and I cannot believe I picture myself in New Zealand, in Auckland, in my bedroom. I would have been about 31, 32 years old, out of my divorce. I was in a relationship with a guy that I worked with, and I remember sitting on my bed and getting my computer out thinking there must be more. He was seeing other women behind my back. Like I was trying to get his attention, and it just felt like everything I did, I was like, what am I doing wrong? Why am I not good enough? And I felt this volume in my head turn up of, am I not pretty enough? Am I not skinny enough? Am I not, there must be something wrong with me. Like I don't understand why I can't get this guy's attention and why he won't commit and why he won't. And I started looking up, and my guest today, as you know, Natalie Lue, is literally, I feel like I've already known you, Natalie, because I bought one of your books way back then in 2011. And as I said in my introduction, and then I listened to some of your sound bites, and hearing your voice sound the podcast, it feels like I know you. And you were with me in that bedroom on beginning of my darkest moments. I didn't realize it was going to get a lot harder for me and a lot darker for me. But your work was your blog and your book and I think they were like SoundCloud bites at that point. You kept me company. You kept me company when I was crying, and you gave me hearing your story and hearing you write so beautifully and you talk so well that it just felt like you were my friend talking to me, trying to make sense of what was going on. So I want to say, first of all, and that Barbara in her early 30s, now I'm mid 40s, I have my own private therapy practice. I now help people with some of the things that you taught me. And I would never have imagined in a million years that your work was the start, the catalyst of my healing, basically, of finding the why. And I never knew I would have been a therapist. I promise you, I was in marketing. I had no idea. So I can't believe you're on my podcast and I'm speaking to you. So from the bottom of my heart, I know you're going to help so many people today, Natalie. And I just want to paint a picture to people how big deal this, how I can't even get my words out. That's how excited I am. How much of a big deal this is. I want anyone to walk into a bookstore and you pick up a book and think 13, 14 years later, whatever, that you're going to be speaking to that author. Like what? Wow. Yeah, what a cool world we live in. So anyway, hi Natalie, it's so nice to have you here.
Honestly, I feel so grateful to be here. I what you just said there, I felt myself well up when when you expressed all of that. Um, you never know when you're doing something, writing something, sharing your story. I've been very vulnerable. I have been open with boundaries, of course. Um, I've been online for 20 years doing this. And it is precisely because I wanted to connect with people just like you who have those thoughts like, what's wrong with me? Am I not good enough? Like, what did I do? Okay, right, let me try this, let me try this. I'm not, and it plays into all the worst feelings, all the worst fears, everything that you've ever held in about yourself. And as I said, I've been doing this work for a long time, and you can inadvertently sometimes take for granted what you've done or forget the importance of what you've done. And thank you for sharing it, because I really felt that very deeply what you shared there, and I felt like I needed to hear that. So thank you.
Yeah, it's just a podcast weren't even a thing back then. So that's what I mean.
No,
I want to take people on this journey that imagine picking a book up from, I think it was actually one of the first online books, ebooks I would have bought actually was your book because I wanted it right away.
if Mr. Unavailable and the Fallback Girl.
Yes.
It's the gift that keeps giving. That book. I wrote that the first version of it in February, released the first version in February 2008, and then rewrote it after doing kind of these three mini parts of it, rewrote it as a full book in 2011, which felt like going through a very difficult pregnancy with that book, because it was just, oh my God. And then like finally, you think it's going to be really easy to do this thing. And then it turned out rewriting something you'd already written was a complete flipping nightmare, but very worth it. And oh my gosh, it is, I've written a number of other books, and don't get me wrong, I love more, but that book has changed my life and other people's lives in ways far beyond what I imagined. And it's a book I think that just really, I think, speaks to, no matter all the buzzwords I think that fly around about dating and relationships now. And of course, our relationships have shifted in good ways as well, over the last like decade or so. I think it really speaks to what I think, in particular, a lot of women struggle with. That feeling good enough, chasing after the wrong people. We have been socialized into accepting really less than what we need, desire, and deserve out of our relationships. And we blame ourselves, and we put it on ourselves to try harder, be sexier, make more money, whatever it might be. It always comes back to us. We blame ourselves, and we don't look at, well, is this the right person for me? Is this relationship even healthy and loving and fulfilling? And what is going on within me that I would want to accept a relationship like this? What's happened in my life that when somebody mistreats me, sleeps around on me, doesn't bother to respond to me, isn't attentive, whatever, can't get their attention. What is it about that is so familiar? What happened in my past that makes me receptive to this kind of behavior? It makes me think that this is normal, because when we start to really examine all of that, it's not that we go, okay, well, it's all my fault. Nah, it's not about that. It's about going, oh, I don't really want this person. I'm not in love with this person. This person is not right for me. This relationship is showing me where I really need to resolve something in my past, but also where I need to, trite as I know it can sound sometimes, really love, care, trust, and respect for myself more.
And that's,
It's figuring out those boundaries.
yeah, boundaries definitely. But why do we, speaking from experience, back then I would put myself in, you think of a pretzel, I would kind of move myself in a pretzel to mirror the
Hmm.
person. And I remember saying things to myself like, oh, it doesn't really matter if I'm not happy. I want to make this person happy. And if I make this person happy, then I'm going to be happy. I had
Hmm.
no regard for self-love. I had no self-esteem. I had no self-worth. And only now I didn't realize that how you feel on the inside is what you reflect in a partner on the outside. So what I was attracting in these unavailable men was I was actually unavailable myself because
Yeah.
I didn't think, really, if I boil it down, I didn't love myself, but a lot of people can't fathom what that means because we all talk about it. So if I go deeper, it's just what my boundaries were, what red flags were. I had no idea what was I worth?
Hmm.
Like, do I want a guy that says, I'm going to pick you up at 7 o'clock and he picks me up at 7 o'clock? Or do I want someone that's talking to other women? And it almost gets to a point we pull ourselves into this pretzel kind of mode that we start dismissing, oh, I don't want to be that woman that's always on his case. I don't want to be that nagging woman. So I'll just relax. And as soon as I see anyone saying that, I want you to go, why am I saying that? So what we do is we discredit our feelings. Something feels off. Oh, I don't want to be naggy, or I want to be the cool woman that my partner's flirting with, or just having girlfriends. And I feel there's something there, but I'm probably wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is about, you know, I think, and I do think, look, I'm somebody who, and you have too, we've both benefited from the technological shifts in terms of we get to do what we do. Like you get to have this podcast, I have been able to have my blog, whichever. But I tell you something that one of the casualties of online is that I think that we can be very dismissive, as you say, around the whole like self-love, like what does that even mean? Like love yourself, like what does that even mean? And then, but the reality is that it's not that you can't have things in life if you don't love yourself, because you and I can both sit here and think of quite a few people in the public eye who clearly have issues, and they are still they're still in relationships, they are out there doing various things or whichever else. But we're still going to you're still going to grapple with stuff in some way, and you can do harm to yourself and you can do harm to others. Now, when we are really not setting the standard for ourselves and we're contorting, twisting ourselves into a pretzel for partners, we lose ourselves in our relationships. And if it feels natural for us to do that, or we would put pressure on us to contort ourselves in that way, that is a way that we have learned to be. There are things that have happened earlier on in our lives and also in adulthood, but childhood does set the scene because it is when we are malleable and we learn the patterns we adopt these roles, these identities within our family or our family environment, as some might say, our family of origin. And we take on these identities, but we go through various things. It might be with our parents and caregivers. It could be what we've gone through with siblings or extended family or school or different life experiences. And they can be a mixture of what we might call quote unquote positive and negative experiences. But they add up to shape habits of thinking and feeling and behavior that we have in certain contexts. Throw in as well that we are not just in this little bubble with the people that we were born around. And so there's school, church, community, TV, the media, society, all of those things. And we start getting some pretty funny ideas about what it takes to be in a relationship. What is dating? A lot of us learn that from TV, books, the media, observing people around us, what our parents did in an entirely different time. And we also learn about what's attractive, what's not attractive. we learn about what's good and what's bad. And the reality is that if you, I mean, you and I are similar ages, I'm tipped into being more late 40s now, but we came up in a time when the solution to everything for women was always try harder. Um, oh, you're having problems in your relationship? Cosmopolitan or something like that would advise you to put on your sexy lingerie, light some candles, cook a dinner, get the Kama Sutra out because that used to be tutored in magazines,
Yeah.
all the time, you know. But that was the advice of back then. The advice also that we and our parents and grandparents and above, and the next generation down have had this as well, was that if you're being cheated on, if they're not giving you attention, this is specifically for hetero relationships, then it is because you are not sexing him enough. You are not trying hard enough. You're not pretty enough. Is this still very pervasive idea in society that in your heteronormative relationship, if you are experiencing problems with in the relationship, if the guy isn't meeting you properly where you want to be, it is because you haven't tried hard enough. That men only leave women or don't give attention to or don't treat them right if they've been provoked into it by their lack of worthiness or by their lack of efforts. And so women are socialized to see themselves as being interchangeable. And so when we feel as if something doesn't feel right, it's like, oh, I've been replaced by somebody better. If I had been sexy enough, if I'd worn the right lingerie, if I was skinnier, if I was bigger, if my hair was this, if I did that, the list is, and we can find a million and one things because society, the media, advertising, marketing has also said when men are advertised to, it is from this place of you are already amazing, and this thing that you buy will only enhance what is already brilliant. For women, I've always said, women are marketed to from a place of you are not enough. And if you buy this thing, you will be sexier, more attractive, more desirable, whatever it might be. It's a very, very different thing. And so we're on the back foot. And then we accepting these sucky relationships, draining ourselves out and spinning our wheels and contorting ourselves. And then, of course, the person isn't around. And then we're still in this pretzel. So now we've got to untangle all of that and figure and be like, who are we? But often people stay in the pretzel and just move on to somebody else and twist themselves even more.
Yeah, because and they just get further down that path of, that was me. When I discovered your work, I had been that pretzel time and time again because I was in my early
Mm-hmm.
30s and I started serious dating when I was like in my early 20s. So it had been over like 11, 12 years of even a marriage in there of doing all of that. And
Mm-hmm.
I think too, a lot of people don't know what we're going to talk about being emotionally unavailable, people pleasing, and a bit of
Mm-hmm.
the joy of saying no, because believe it or not, they all interlinked, aren't they?
Oh, 100%,
Yeah.
100%. And I'm like you, like I grew up in mostly in Dublin in Ireland, and I can see me twisting myself into a pretzel probably from the get-go. Like in my teens, whichever boy I was going out with, at first I would appear to be like, oh, she's a cool girl, Natalie. And then over time, the wheels will come off. And a book that I still think about every week probably is Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn.
Mm.
I don't know if you've read that or watched the film.
I've watched the film. Yeah.
Um, yeah, but the character Amy Dunn shook me because as sociopathic as she really is speaking to a lot of what we have done as women. Cool girl, twists herself into a pretzel. I was cool girl, right? And it shook me because I could see myself. I could see so many women I had come across. I I remember going out with one guy, and what he always wanted to do what he wanted to do, and he was like, "Let's go to the movies." Don't get me wrong, I'm not against like doing that, but it was always about what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
Like he was very into like watching. He became obsessed with the Bee Gees at one point. So then I had to be listening to, or watching this Bee Gee reunion thing. I was like, oh my, don't get me wrong, I like the Bee Gees, but I was like, I found like this is a metaphor for how I am in all of my relationships. Like, if they're really into sports, I'm claiming I'm really into sports. And I have openly talked about how for 2 years with one of the men who really tipped the balance for me, I claimed that my favorite film was City of God. You know, that acclaimed Brazilian movie about so it's based in like the slums in Brazil, and it's drug wars there. I claimed that that was my favorite film. I don't get me wrong, it was a good film, but it wouldn't. I mean, I haven't watched that film for probably close to 20 years now, but it wouldn't have probably even be in my top 50. My favorite films, joint favorite films, are Ghost and Coming to America.
Mhm.
So they're radically, radically different films. But for 2 years, I pretended that what he loved was that he was very like frowned on like not watching subtitled films and stuff like that. And I was like that woman at the beginning of Coming to America when he says, hop on one leg and bark like a dog. I was her in my relationships. And there are a lot of me's, there are a lot of our past younger versions of Barbara's and Natalie's out there because we learned to be that way. We were taught to be that way as part of our survival.
Yeah, and actually, when you're in it, I honestly didn't know any different. Like when I was in these relationships and I was loving these unavailable men, I didn't realize there's a pattern. And when you're out
Mm.
of it and you can see it, it's very clear whether someone, what I love my younger clients, I get them to watch that movie, He's Just Not That Into You.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Hmm.
Because if he's not calling or he's not messaging, you actually don't even need to try. If a guy wants to be with you, he won't leave you alone. And I mean, I don't mean like the stalky kind. I mean a healthy, I mean a healthy love. As if someone's interested, you'll know.
Yeah. I always say, when somebody is genuinely interested in you, they are not resisting you. And again, this is not about the whole you're chasing them down, they're chasing you down, or like a stalkery thing. They they're not trying to resist you. They are meeting you. They are consistently showing up. It's not this blowing hot and cold, this playing hard to get. And I think that what we find happens, and you see this in that movie, is that we make excuses for why someone isn't calling. And I've observed this. I have a 17, almost 18-year-old daughter, and it's funny because she's clearly picked up a lot from me. So she finds herself going, just shaking her head because, as an example, she had a friend who had exactly what you described. She, got off with a guy, and then he distanced straight afterwards. And my daughter was like, I'd be careful there. That seems a bit sketchy to me. Then he started saying about how he's only just out of a relationship, and yeah, he's only just out of a relationship, and he feels like he just wants to, have his space and time. But he'd actually asked my daughter out, asked my daughter to go out with him only 2 weeks before. So my daughter was like, "This is sketchy," and this girl was like, and then another few of the girls like, "No, he's really into you. He just doesn't know it yet. He feels maybe a bit overwhelmed by his feelings." Where are we getting this stuff from?
Yeah.
That it is still the same bullshit that we go to about people's behavior. We fill in the blanks and we come up with this story. But the fact of the matter is that when somebody is genuinely interested in you, they don't resist you, they don't make up stories about why they can't see you. They don't blow hot and cold. And they certainly, which was the case with this one, they don't tell you that they're not interested in a relationship, that they just see you as a friend and then start flirting with you all over again and basically seeing if they can get something on the side.
Of course. Of course. Yeah, yeah. And I think it's the culture of boys are mean to you because they like you. And that from when we're little, they tease us and then that oh, he's just probably got a lot on, just wait. And why do we why do we take so much less than what we deserve?
Yeah, it's one of my most common questions is that, or it's often phrased to me as, I want to be in more loving relationships, but then I meet someone who is quote unquote nice, and I really don't. When people use the word nice in dating and relationships, it kind of sets my teeth on edge. But like, I met a nice guy, or I met a nice girl, because obviously,
Yeah.
everyone can be experiencing this stuff. So why is it that I feel turned off? Why am I getting the ick? Why don't I feel interested? And I say it's because their behavior doesn't match you where you're at in your sense of worthiness, right? You're geared up for somebody who dicks you around. You're geared up for somebody who, is blowing hot and cold. They're ambivalent, they're ambiguous. One minute, the sun shines out of you. The next thing, it's like, hello, Earth to like, where are you? Um, you're geared up for drama, maybe. And so, for instance, when they meet somebody and they call when they say they're going to call, or they message when they say they're going to message, or they turn up when they say they're going to turn up, or they consistently show interest, they can literally feel quite revulsed
Mm.
by it. And that's because they they don't feel worthy of that type of relationship. When somebody comes along and messes them around, they feel worthy of that. And so that whole thing of like when I talk about setting the standard and treating ourselves like with love, care, trust, and respect, it is because uh, we accept only slightly less from others than what we do from us than what we do from ourselves. So when we consistently treat and regard ourselves with love, care, trust, and respect, we won't accept less than what we can already do for ourselves. And I look back, and it's often easier to see it when you're out of it. Although some people have said to me, actually, they sometimes when they're in the midst of it, they go, "Oh my God, like this is me, just in a different form." But I look back and I can see that my relationships really mirrored the lack of love, care, trust, and respect that I had for myself. And what you also find with mirroring, and this is a really, really key thing as well, when you say about the accepting less, is that when I say that we engage with partners who mirror things to us, that doesn't mean that we are, for instance, let's say we are involved with somebody who is narcissistically inclined and they mistreat us, right? That doesn't mean that we're drawn to them because it's like, oh, like I'm the same as that person. But what they're mirroring back is that real lack of self love that we have for ourselves that then manifests itself in us thinking that the way for us to feel good about ourselves is for somebody to breeze in, blow smoke up our ass for a while, build us up, as somebody of that kind of temperament does. Like we are basically trying to catch the rays. That's why so many people get drawn to people who are narcissistically inclined, because that that lack of care. But what that person is showing us is that we don't are not loving ourselves enough, but we can love ourselves in a way that they can't do for themselves, never mind for us. Right? When we say that somebody when we're like, oh my gosh, I don't understand it. Like, I'm crazy about this person, but they're just so inconsistent. Look at where are you being inconsistent with yourself? When you are with somebody and you're like, I don't feel like they are attentive to my needs, where are you hiding your needs? Because, like you, and I've done it, I've been it, and I've come across so many people who do. A lot of women in particular, but men as well, all people pride themselves on being low maintenance. They are afraid of looking like they are dramas. They are afraid of being looking like they are demanding, needy, too sensitive, difficult, rude, whatever. And so they hide their needs. They play them down. But the fact of the matter is you can't be in a relationship where you're talking about how somebody is not being attentive to your needs without acknowledging to yourself where how you being in that relationship means that you're ignoring your needs. I always say, when you say to me somebody is being like, oh my God, like my partner's so ambiguous, there's no such thing as being in a relationship where only one person is ambiguous. Because if you were not ambiguous, you would have been like, I need clarity about that thing. You would also be absolutely clear in what it is that you need to be, do, and say. So it's like, where are you being ambiguous there? It's like, they're not listening to me. Where are you not listening to yourself? Right? uh, each thing is mirroring back. It doesn't make you the same. It's not a like, oh my God, like now I'm like this terrible person. Or it's not about that. It's not about, you don't have to pronounce some judgment. It's like, what is this relationship? What is this dynamic? What is this thing that I'm saying is not happening or is happening? What is that showing to me? Because our relationships give us a window into understanding what we need so that we can embody that more and experience more love, care, trust, and respect.
Mm. Yeah. Do you really think because you've written a whole book about it, do you think being emotionally unavailable, people that can't commit, people that don't follow through, people that have other people on the side, people that invite their exes back in. So if anyone's listening to this, if you want to be with someone but they're emotionally unavailable, but the ex-wife is still in the picture, like circling around, or the ex-husband is, do you kind of, I get the idea of when you're talking about the mirroring is if we look deep inside, I feel like we are emotionally unavailable ourselves because we just don't think we're like, it just goes back to your worth. And if you don't think, it mirrors back to you that when someone's acting like that, you go, oh, of course, because I don't deserve any better. I'm not even available for myself, because most of
Yep.
us now, as a therapist, and I've continued to do this work, I will always do this work on myself, but now I help other people do it. We never really listen to that inner voice that's like, what do you want to do for a job? We stop dreaming, we stop living, and we
Yeah.
just tick boxes. So I feel like, especially in love, um, and the society, people would rather have someone than not. And this is what I don't understand. I've been single for nearly 7 years by choice, and it has been beautiful and magical, and it has been the best 7 years of my life. Because it's interesting that I know a lot of people are with people who are emotionally unavailable, but they stay with them because it's better to have a little bit of something than nothing.
Yeah. Some crumbs is better than no crumbs is it's that mentality. And you're so right that look, a lot of us are socialized and conditioned to be emotionally unavailable. That is simply because if you are not a child right now, so you're not basically more or less under the age of 18, you grew up in what I call the age of obedience. That is where the disciplining, interacting, and communicating with children centered on making them as excessively compliant as possible, particularly around authorities. And that is what taught us to be people pleasers. Because what happens is that, I grew up in a time where it was like, of course, you're similar age. So it was like children should be seen and not heard. I'll give you something to cry about. This is my house. And if you don't like it, you know where you can go. Don't be a sissy. Don't be a baby. Those who can't hear will feel. The list is endless of the ways in which we were really taught that it really wasn't safe to be us. Now, and bear in mind, our parents, grandparents, and so forth grew up in the same time. We did not grow up like the way my children have, for instance, hearing about boundaries, feelings, needs, wants, self-care. Boundaries What boundaries? Our parents owned our boundaries,
Mm.
right? Feelings, what feelings? Our parents might slap the feelings out of us or tell us like how wrong it was for us to have this. No, that's not what you feel. You feel this feeling instead. Needs, what needs? They'd be like, when I was your age, I didn't even have any shoes, or I didn't do this, or I didn't get to have this. You said you say you want something. You want something, do you? Oh, you're spoiled or you're selfish, or well, I barely had anything. You know, self-care, not even in the vocabulary, right? So you have huge swaths of people who are disconnected from themselves because they learned to play to what their environment, to what they were being told that they needed to be, or what they inferred that they needed to be from it. And so they became disconnected from their needs, desires, expectations, feelings, and opinions. They became disassociated from their bodies, from their yeses and their nos. It is not possible to be a people pleaser, to be certainly an active one, certainly a very sort of frequent, intense, active one, and also be emotionally available at the same time. And so emotional availability and people pleasing are very closely linked because being emotionally available is about really being available to feel, right? That means available to your needs, desires, expectations, feelings, and opinions. If you're suppressing and repressing those needs, desires, expectations, feelings, and opinions, which is what people pleasing is, it's not possible to be emotionally available. So when we are emotionally unavailable, it is because we are shut down, or we are certainly, consciously or not, going out of our way to avoid feelings, avoid being ourselves in some way. And we have learned to interact in certain ways because that's the emotional style that we had. But then what happens with emotional unavailability is essentially that you become afraid of getting so close to somebody that you feel that it would hurt if they were to disappoint you. Hello, life, or they were to leave. And because a lot of us are people pleasers because of old hurts and disappointments, or because we feel abandoned, we then go out of our way to people please as a way to put that distance between us. We pretend to be something we're not. We say yes when we really mean no. We hide how we truly feel. You know, we play out these personas, but it's not possible to do all of that and also be yourself. And this is the rub. Because if you're not being yourself, you can't turn around and say that you're emotionally, available. And it's not about some people be sitting here and be like, well, life, don't we all have to be people pleasers sometimes? Yeah, sure, because like we're all dealing with emotional baggage and we're all navigating stuff that comes up in life. But actively avoiding and shutting down your feelings, numbing yourself through the likes of people pleasing, or it might be over something, so overeating, spending, through sex, chasing people through dating apps, any way in which you are actively escaping yourself,
Mm.
intentionally or not, shuts you down. If you are not saying no and there's just a hell of a lot of yes in your life, don't make out like it's because it's always the stuff you wanted to do. It's because you're lying to yourself and you're lying to others. And that is emotional unavailability. And that causes us to, for instance, resist commitments, to actively avoid it. We might experience anxiety around it, but also, like us, you can feel like, no, I want to be in a relationship. We're out there looking for love, often in the wrong places. But actually, and this was the thing that I had to ask myself, Natalie, you're saying that you really want to be in a relationship, right? You're saying that you want to love. But actually, what I was doing was I was always in the same patterns. So I'm the only person who shows up to every act, scene, and moment of my life. Yeah, I am. That from day dot. Yeah, I'm the only person who's shown up to every act, scene, and moment. So that doesn't mean that I'm responsible for what romantic partners or anybody else have done. But it did then beg the question of what am I bringing into each of those situations. And what we are each bringing is that emotional baggage that affects our emotional availability. It affects the people pleasing. And I was looking for the love that I didn't get from my parents. I was looking for validation.
Yeah.
I was looking to meet old unmet needs. I often gravitated to people who were narcissistically inclined, who blow in like promise you the sun, the moon, and a field full of ponies, and then breeze back on out and turn into flipping a nightmare on Elm Street. And that's because I grew up with the parents I did. And I kept looking for love in the wrong places. And when I finally started to have the boundaries I needed to really phase out that kind of malarkey that I was dealing with, I had room to love and care about myself because I was no longer flipping living and then chasing the past.
Yeah, yeah. And if I think I can add my little bit in here too, is if I think back to I always would have a partner or boyfriends and stuff. And I think the reason why at that time I wanted a boyfriend, or when I got married and stuff, it was because I was so empty this is only on reflection now, and in this time you don't know,
Mm,
but I was so empty on the inside. And the love I would get from someone, I would feel like it would top me up. It would make me feel good because I didn't even know how to love myself. I didn't even know it was a thing. I didn't know what it would feel like. Because I
yeah.
would have the internal dialogue of who am I? Like I'm not that important. I'm not that special. So this person, if they say that I'm good and they like me, that love at that time felt so much more powerful than if someone
Yep.
said to me, you need to love yourself first. I would have flicked them the bird and said F off, like whatever, who no one loves themselves. That used to be me. And the love I would get
Hmm.
from a man would give me a high and it would just give me this,
Yeah.
that's all I would need.
Yeah. I mean, you yeah, that was me. And there's a word we use back home. You probably use it as well in Australia as well. But navel gazers. So I think that growing up, as we both know, the whole loving yourself thing, no, that was considered to be narcissistic when we were fucking navel gazers. That's what we used to navel gazer. Mayfainer is another term we use in Ireland, which is somebody who's all about themselves. And so I think that a lot of us have this fear of, oh, but if like, who am I to be like
Yeah.
loving myself? Doesn't that make me a narcissist? Doesn't that make me pompous? Doesn't that make me full of myself? Doesn't that make me, and the list is long. And we should all consider when we think about when I hear the term loving myself, caring for yourself, putting myself first. What are the first things that spring to mind? Get a piece of paper out. Probably selfish is on there fairly early on. Yeah, there's some negative connotations around that, and those are messages that we picked up earlier on in life. And I'm like you. I was always looking for something outside myself. Typically, men. I grew up on Dynasty, Dallas, Falcon Crest, Beverly Hills 90210. Yeah, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Friends, all that type of stuff. But as a young kid, Dynasty, Dallas, like I probably shouldn't have been watching that at like 6, 7. So love is like drama, you know, fur coats flying, earrings, all that, and it's mirrored in my home. I became obsessed with the film Supergirl from the early 80s, I think. And I remember watching, I think I was 8, and I must have watched that thing. So, and I was obsessed with the feeling that I guess imagined that Supergirl and the guy in the film that they have that I was obsessed with that feeling, and I kept seeking romance. Like I remember being like 8, 9, and wondering like, whoa, this feeling of romance is gonna like on some level thinking it's gonna fill this hole,
Yeah.
and there was this gaping hole, this void in me. And sometimes we're aware of it, and sometimes we're not, but we're looking for something to make up for something that we've either never had, or that we thought we had and now it's gone, or that we think it has to be like that because it's how it was before. And it causes us to gravitate to the wrong people and relationships and situations.
I love that you brought up movies because you see every movie is mostly a guy and a girl, and they get together, and it's all
Yeah.
it's all lovey-dovey and a happy ending. let's just look at life. All of us, if you take a moment to reflect in our life, we have challenges all day, every day that keeps us. We've got to have challenges so we know when we have good days and we have the polarities of
Hmm.
bad days. We've got to have that in life. But when you have movies, especially the ones that give me the shits, are the ones that the college roommates and they were together, then they split up, and then 20 years later they meet each other again. They're an extra
Yawn.
reason. Don't go back.
Yawn. Yeah, I feel that movies have the movie that I certainly back. So Baggage Reclaim, I started writing in 2005, and I kept hearing a similar theme. And I thought to myself, where might people have got the impression that this is how to go? And I call it the pretty woman fantasy. Now,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, I love Pretty Woman,
Yeah.
but it is myself and one of my closest friends, we call it our favorite problematic film of all time. But I love it. The soundtrack is absolutely banging on Pretty Woman. That is remarkably a feel good film, even though that is a jacked up premise. Here's the thing. That movie has caused people to think, oh, I can basically turn a booty call, a situationship, some barely there sexual thing that I can in the space like in the movie, obviously in the space of a week, like it's Vivian, kind of blah blah. But people think that because of that film, it's that pretty woman fantasy, that they can turn, something that is really quite sexually driven into the fairy tale. That he or she or they through there are suddenly going to twig like, oh my God, I know all we've been doing is like having the sex. And sometimes I like just text them like at 2 o'clock in the morning as if I'm ordering a pizza and be like, you free? They suddenly, oh my God. Yeah, in between all of that, they realized I am the one. No, man, this is not it. The other one, now this isn't a movie, but I think another thing that had an impact, and I think this is specifically for people who have been in an affair, is good old Camilla Parker Bowles, who went from the other woman and now she's queen or queen consort or whatever. Yeah. The point is people absorb this stuff and they think, I'm gonna be the exception. Now, don't get me wrong. Do I know people who started out as an affair and wound up together? Yeah, not
Really?
more personal, but like
No,
I've
I
come
don't know
across it.
many.
But there's not many.
No.
And I tell you something, it is a fantasy. And I always say, with affairs, you mentioned, and you and I both talked about how we've been involved. I was involved in a pivotal relationship with a coworker. It's gone back a long time ago now, thankfully. But he had a girlfriend, and that relationship broke me. And I know you were talking about how you were seeing somebody and they were involved with other women. An affair is what happens when you've got two people who are escaping themselves. They are looking for an external solution to an internal issue. That internal issue can be literally what's going on inside of them. That will be a factor in it. And it can also be the internal of the relationship. So rather than deal with whatever it is in the relationship, if there is something to deal with, because I would like to stress that just because somebody is having an affair, it doesn't actually mean that there is something quote unquote well, terrible or wrong going on in a relationship. Like, oh my, that person's doing something to them. Some people actually cheat because things are going well, because it is stable, it is loving, and it's like, can't they see I ain't shit? Can't, like, what the hell's going on here? This doesn't fit my sense of worthiness. It feels too normal. They feel like they have to play hooky. And that we've got to stop buying into this narrative that people only cheat because the other person is lousy and hasn't been meeting their needs. Yeah. That's just bullshit. Yeah. Uh, does that happen sometimes? Yeah. But it's not the mainstay narrative of affairs. But when we are the affair partner, something to consider. So that can be knowingly or not, but like if we're with somebody and we know that they kind of like mess around on us, and that is not something that we've co-signed to, yeah, because then we wouldn't be calling it messing around. But we there's a part of us that doesn't believe in love, doesn't believe that we will be loved again, doesn't believe that we are worthy enough of love, doesn't trust that that is there, and we have shut down. And if you are an affair partner, you have shut down. A part of you has given up, and so you are involved with somebody who can't fully give to you, and that suits whatever you're grappling with inside.
Mm.
Hands down.
Yeah, yeah, and also think I want people to think about it that, you know, and everyone's human, there's no judgment here, but if you meet
Mm.
someone who's attached and you're attached and you have a fling, always keep in mind that that shows you that there's boundaries that have been crossed, and they will probably keep doing it too until they realize that they stop running away from themselves.
Yeah, I always say to people, I say, look, I have worked with a lot of people who have been cheated on, and I've also worked with a lot of people who have done the cheating. And something I did an episode of the podcast on this. I can send it to you, where I talk about people pleasing shows up everywhere, and cheating is one of them. And this episode I did, it would have been around a time when the Joy is Saying No was coming out. I shared a deleted chapter, and it was I think it was called Gone Girl, Tiger Woods, and the Dark Side of People Pleasing. And in this episode, I talk about how you would be amazed at the amount of people who I've heard from, but who never mind, who are out there in life, who they are the good girl, the good guy. And people see them, they look like they have it all together. And they are struggling and with keeping up that identity. And they're in the wrong relationship, but because they're the good girl, and maybe this person is actually fine for all intents and purposes, just not the one. They don't know how to turn around and say, this isn't for me. This isn't working. I don't feel the same way, or whatever it is. And so you get, for instance, and this is particularly with women, good girl gone rogue. And what happens is that they cheat as a way to make themselves feel bad enough that it will be okay for them to leave the relationship. Right? It's a way of also sometimes throwing off the shackles of being the good girl or the good guy or whatever it might be. And so it brings everything crashing down. They act out because they are sick of doing the expected thing. And there's a lot of resentment there. So cheating is complex. And as we both said, we're not sitting here judging anyone who's been on either side of it, but you have to start getting very honest with yourself about what's going on. And please don't lie to yourself and be like, oh, they only lie to their partner or their spouse. They don't lie to me. They're only lying because it's an affair. No, please stop this. Yeah. This is not what's going on here. Oh, they're doing this. They wouldn't risk their marriage, their relationship, whatever it might be, if they weren't really crazy about me. Please stop telling yourself those things now. That is a lie that is allowing you to continue on with the deception. And the thing is that an affair, when you are, for instance, the affair partner, so the other person is the one who's got the relationship, invites delay and guilt and shame into your life. And this person may have lovely qualities. I'm not saying, by any stretch that any person who, is cheating, they're all like terrible people. Some people, they're making dodgy decisions, yeah. But at the end of the day, they can't give you a full relationship, and that might suit. Like, I look back and I realized that it suited me at the time when I was in that affair to be on the fringes. We'd finish work, it'd come round, be done and dusted by the time EastEnders was started at 8 o'clock. It's like, what kind of life
Yeah.
is this. But I put up with that for all like eight, I think it was 18 months or something. It was madness and it broke me. It destroyed me. But it was the thing that forced me to really take a good, hard look at myself.
Mm.
In fact, you said something at the beginning of this that nestled itself in my brain clearly and has come right back. And you said something along the lines of, you know, we'll settle for less and we'll be like, oh, it doesn't matter how they're treating me. I really like this person. Uh, we need to be really careful when we hear ourselves saying it's like, look at me giving this bountiful gift of all of my love and care and attention to this person. I'm going to give it all to them. It doesn't matter how they're treating me. I love them. I want them. It doesn't matter. Like, it does matter, right? And that can show up across any area of our life because when you said that, what I thought of was how, I haven't had a relationship. I stopped having a relationship with my mother just over 2 years ago.
Mm.
And I, at different points, I had said to myself, do you know what? She's having an opportunity to have a better relationship with her grandchildren than she had with me. But as the wheels came off on that and it became clear that some of that dodgy stuff was sort of showing up, I then sort of said to myself, why would you put yourself in a position where you continue to be exposed to some of this carry on, this malarkey from her that you have been dealing with from her from when you were children? Because, this is for the kids.
Mm.
Like, why would you do that? Do look at where you are using that kind of reasoning in your life. Like, it's okay. Doesn't matter how they are with me. At least they're la la la. No,
Mm.
because there's an area to tidy up there.
You know what? Thank you so much for sharing that because you normalize just because someone's a parent or someone has a title that you enable them in your life. I can resonate with this. So I haven't seen or spoken to my dad since I was 20. And I'm
Okay.
44 now. And for that reason is he had an affair with another woman, left my mother. He would have had multiple affairs with my mother. But for 21 years
Hmm.
marriage, treated my mum like shit. And I'm the oldest kid. And I just saw he was always the person he was. But growing up, daddy's little girl, I just thought he was the coolest guy on earth until I got to a
Mm,
certain point and was like, actually, you're an asshole and you're not a nice
yeah.
person. And it was got to that point where I was just like, inviting you in my life, I mean, I love him, he's my dad, and he provided for me, and I went to a good school, and
Hmm.
like he did okay. But for me
Yeah.
to continue having someone like that in my life, it's never going to do me any good.
Hmm.
So that's why I walked away from that. Or the last thing he said to me was like expletive words, and said, "Well, I'm taking you out of my will." And I said, "Okay, good on you." And that was literally the last thing my dad said to me was, "Yeah, I'm taking you out of my will. You're not never going to get any money from me ever again." And I was like, "Okay."
I love when they throw the money thing around, like that's the only reason why you be in their life.
Yeah, I was like, okay. And then over those years I've grieved, but I never had the father that I wanted. So everyone's like, aren't you sad? And then people go, you've only got one parent. But then if I give them a snippet of what my dad was like, they go, oh, oh. So I don't explain myself anymore, but thank you for normalizing and it just being okay that sometimes it doesn't matter who it is in your life. You get to pick and choose who you surround yourself with.
And thank you also for, your frankness in that, because I think you're right. Like, we have to normalize talking about this. And, I was only saying this on the podcast the other day. Look, if you are somebody listening to this and you're like, I could just never imagine not having a relationship with one or both my parents, listen, I'm really pleased for you that you have what might be a much better situation than what either myself or Barbara have had. But you are not either of us. And as a society, we really have to do better in our empathy around people who don't have what we see as the quote unquote normal relationship with their parents, who are estranged. If somebody has undertaken the decision to step away from one or both parents, That is not a decision that has been taken lightly. Yeah. And putting somebody in a position where it's like, well, how could you not have a relationship with your mother or father? It already takes you away from the empathy and the compassion because you're making a judgment based on, oh, I wouldn't do that, or my parents this, but
You.
it's not about you. And what happens is then you almost then feel like you have to lay out all the abuse or the neglect or
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
whatever it is. But and actually, my brother won't mind me saying this, but he was listening to a podcast the other day where it's an advice podcast, and somebody had written into the podcast explaining about how they have come to dread their parents' visits,
Yeah.
and it was so stressful, anxiety inducing, how they were treated. They were sometimes difficult with the kids. And the hosts of the podcasts were like, "Oh, that's your mom." Like, "Oh, look, you have to figure this out because like that's your mom." Um, my brother loves this podcast. But he was like, "I can't let this stand." And so he wrote in and he was like, "I love your podcast, but I really think you were off base with what you said to the person who wrote it into you the other day." He said, "Not all, for instance, mothers love their kids,
Yeah.
or fathers for that matter, but not all of them have the best of intentions. Not all of those relationships are healthy. Some people have experienced abuse, not just in childhood, but in adulthood as well. Sometimes it has just become like not possible for that relationship to continue on in that vein." And telling people that it's your mom, your child, you can't, if you act as if you've got to pay back your parents for your existence
Mm.
by accepting whatever they or others throw at you, because it will start to show itself
Yeah.
in your other relationships. Yeah. So the logic of, well, they're responsible for being here. They did this. I'm grateful for everything that my mother did. I also appreciate that she had her own journey and she has been through her own difficulties,
Yeah.
but we cannot have a relationship. I cannot continue in the abusive relationship that we've had. Sure, it's not like, and I said this the other day, it's not like when I was a kid when, yeah, she'd give me a few licks, you get the hiding or whatever. Yeah, you're not going to do that to me in my 40s, but that doesn't mean that the relationship isn't still problematic. Yeah. And we we need to normalize the fact that not it's okay to let go of those relationships. And don't be telling people you can't possibly have tried, and like we know how much we've tried. And it goes both ways as well, like in
Yeah.
a sense, like you were 20 when you walked away from your father. You were showing up and you were trying. Your father's turning around about how he's going to take you out of the will. Like, what are you supposed to say to that?
Yeah. That's right. And I think I turned around because there's so many conversations where people go, "Oh, you don't," and because I was like that with my dad, I was very, very close. And people were like, "Well, you've only got one dad," and blah, blah, blah. And I'd actually just tell them a few things that he would say about me to me or whatever. And they'd go,
Yeah.
that's horrible. Then I realized, hang on, I don't need to justify myself. So all I say now, if anyone, a client or anyone is to say anything like that to me, I'm like, look in the dictionary. What's a definition of a mother? What's a definition of a father? But tell me what your definition of a father is. Caring, words of affirmation, unconditional
Hmm.
love. In my family, there was no unconditional love. It's not my parents' fault. They did the best they could.
No,
I love them
same,
very much for that. That wasn't always the case, though. I've worked on that.
same.
I used to
Yeah,
be like,
same.
so everyone's hearing me, oh gosh, Barbara. No, I've healed that part. But unconditional love, that was just not in my household. I had to earn my parents' love,
Same.
and I had to be the good girl. I
Same.
had to all that kind of stuff. So, if I just think about it, I think you need to earn that title. I don't think being a mother or a father is something that just because you have a child or a stepchild, you get that title. I'm sorry. It's a gift to be a mother. It's a gift to be a father. And you better believe if you're a father, what's your terms of a father? And for me, it's loving and strong and masculine and having emotions and unconditional love and that support. And mother's the same, the motherly instincts. There's a reason
Mm.
why it's called that, but it's just because it's a title, it doesn't give it doesn't, it's like when people are married for anything over the 7 years and they're like, oh, well, we're married and the marriage is dead and the people in it are dead, but they don't want to do anything about it and they just carry on. It's because, oh,
Yeah.
we're married. So it's like, oh, they're my mum and dad. As you said, when you have that mindset, it trickles into your life and it bleeds
Yeah.
into your career. It bleeds into your friendships. So every part of you
Mhm.
starts dying, doesn't it? Oh, that's how I felt.
Oh, but it does. I mean, the thing is that what you don't deal with in one area of your life and where you kind of use a reasoning in one place is going to turn up in another. And something I know for sure is that look, we we needed our parents. Like we depend on our parents for child. Like it's fundamental to our childhood and our survival. Parents, caregivers, and as you say, we can absolutely recognize what's been done, sacrifice. But something I would really caution, and I do this, I say this a lot to people, is because this stuff bleeds into every other area of your life, you got to stop deceiving yourself about the nature of your core relationships. And that doesn't mean that you have to step away or distance or completely end those relationships. Of course not, right? But what you have to recognize is that if you have a healthy, secure, loving relationship with your parents, that's great, right? But if you know that you don't have that with your parents or that certain aspects are dodgy, you have to get clear about what that is. And you have to be like, do you know what? Those are your parents. Yeah. So you can go, it's not that I'm going to go, oh, I'm just going to accept anything, whatever for my parents, but those are my parents and that's what they did. What you can't do is take the stuff that's been going on there or not been happening there and also accept it in other relationships as well. So that's why I say it's important not to deceive yourself. There are plenty of people who will continue to have relationships with their parents and siblings and extended family, and those relationships might bring a level of anxiety or stress or friction, resentment, whatever it might be. But at least if you have the boundaries of being clear about who those people are and what is going on and why, you can limit the impact of what is happening in those relationships. And you can hold the boundary of that's my brethren, that's my family. I've decided that I want to be there and have those relationships, but I'm not accepting that from friends, romantic partner, where I will recognize when that is showing up and I will step up and I will address that. And that can make a big shift in your life. It will also have the knock-on effect that you will probably feel like you speak up and step up more in those familial relationships. Yeah. But you have to have that boundary. It's like, you know what? It's one thing that my mom was critical and my dad was, very emotionally distant, or maybe both of them were, whatever it might be, right? It's one thing that they were that. Maybe both of them were critical, yeah, because there's plenty of people who've had that. It's one thing that they were that. That's my parents, but I'm not accepting that shit from somebody else.
Yeah.
That because once you make that line, you stop looking for your parental replacements in, for instance, your romantic partner or in your boss or whoever it might be. And a lot of things change for you very quickly
Mm.
because you see it for what it is. It's like, oh, like that's my parents. I love them, but like my parent was really, really critical, and I realize that they have their issues, and I'm not. And once you see it, it's like, oh, this person's really critical. Yeah, I'm not taking that shit from him.
Yeah, and that's why Christmas is so stressful. That's why one of the busiest times of the year I stay open over Christmas is because when people do some work with me or with yourself, with anyone in this kind of world, I find that when they're
Mm.
consistent and they learn what the boundaries and what they're okay with and what they're not, it's so jarring for people. And I really support them and help them in that time that when they go to a family reunion or they go to a wedding or a funeral or baby shower, they will often come back to me and go, and this is people they've known their whole life. Wow, I saw my cousin. God, she's a bitch. Or she was just so negative all the time. Or, they actually start hearing the words that their family members say to them. Where the
Mm.
other time they were just on autopilot. I had no idea that my mum was so judgmental, or I had no idea that my friend from primary school was always putting me down.
Yeah, and you know, it's cool. It's really about the depersonalization as well, because I think that when we're kind of still in that very sort of childlike thinking, we make everything that is about make what people say and do or don't say and do about us. It's because I didn't try hard enough. It's because I wasn't worthy enough. It's all about me. They only do this to me. When you and that childlike thinking remains for a lot of us well into our adulthood. And when we start to step back and adjust and like really observe, you go, oh, like you start to see the stuff for what it is and stop making it about you. Like, and you're so right. People will observe the stuff once they can sort of step back. They're like, oh yeah, they do this thing, or they go like, something I say to people is, they will talk, for instance, about a family member or a colleague or a boss who's a bully, and they would have been struggling with it. And I explained that the mistake we make is assuming that somebody who is bully, who's very critical, that is a sign of strength. But actually, it's weak behavior. And once you recognize that this person is insecure, this person is grappling with their own stuff, when you see them kicking off, for instance, at work or at the family party or whatever, it's like, oh, who are like uh, Bianca's being insecure. They get, oh, right, Bianca's that's her weak behavior showing up again. Suddenly you start to see things for what they really are. But when you're telling yourself a whole story about it and you're at the center of that story as like the masterful architect of your demise and who's Jedi mind tricking everybody into, you know, treating you in a particular way or being or not doing certain things, you can't see things for what they are.
Just thought of this one last point too before we start wrapping up. I could literally talk to you all day. Seriously.
Same.
Just you just gave me a flashback of some of the clients that I've been thinking about, the ones that are people pleasers or the ones that can't say no. Again, that was all me. I'm definitely can say no
Mm.
now, and I'm not a people pleaser. So there is evidence that you can actually break through and heal from this. But I think like in mothers groups and all that kind of stuff, and when people have a bit of anxiety, or there might be the quiet one of the group, I hear often people saying to me, my friend Sally, she's so confident and she's so loud and she's so in your face, and I so wish I was like that. And I always say, be very wary of the
Yeah.
loudest one in the room or the look at me, look at me. They're the most insecure people,
Mm.
and they're like, Barbara, are they? There's a difference between being confident, and my voice is loud, so I'm always loud, but there's a difference between being confident and knowing who you are than being the cool. I don't want to put shade on anyone, but the personalities that often I have a lot of that people like me and you, like we're the people places and the ones that couldn't say no because we wanted their approval. We wanted that loud
Yeah.
person, the popular person. We wanted we
Hmm.
like them or their approval. And it's interesting when you kind of we're on the other side of the fence now. You look over the fence and you're like you said, the Bianca, oh, she's kicking off because she's insecure, like insecure. And it's the same with the
Yeah.
loudest person in the room isn't necessarily it's like I was married to a bodybuilder and I used to do bodybuilding back in the day. And people that look like that are the most insecure people about their bodies, which doesn't make any sense. When someone looks like that, you
Yeah.
think, wow, how awesome would it be to like look like that, or you'd have so much confidence. They think that they're smaller than what they are or bigger than what they are, depending if it's a man or a
Hmm.
girl, and they're not confident.
Wow. Yeah. It's very, very true. And I think that um that's stepping back, I've and not putting ourselves at the center of other people's feelings, thoughts, and behavior. It's a learned habit.
Mm.
Um, I call it like, and it doesn't mean look, we're all guilty of being every single human on the planet has their narcissistic moments.
Oh, we
Yeah,
all
that
do.
doesn't make us
Yeah.
narcissists,
Yeah.
but we all do. So somebody criticizes us, and a part of us goes, "The hell do they think they are?" Turn around and they give us some feedback. Or they turn around and, for instance, they're like say that they're not interested or they want to break up. What? How dare they? I should have been the one to break. That's that inner narcissist in us. Now, for most of the population, we move past those and and then there's obviously a portion of people who don't. But something I talk about is the inverted narcissism, where instead of like that delusions of grandeur, it's delusions of inferiority. And so the record we're always playing is everything is about me. It's because I'm not good enough. We center ourselves in other people's feelings and behavior, which then means that we just take what they're saying or doing or not saying or doing too personally. We have to notice where we are doing that, where we have that reflexive self-blame of, oh, it's something I said, it's something I did. I say this at the beginning of my first book, Mr. Unavailable and the Fallback Girl, where it's like, is it something I said? Is it something I did? You know, what did I do to make him change? Am I going crazy? No, you're not. It's none of those things. They're emotionally unavailable. And that, for instance, emotional unavailability, or even, yes, full on shady, toxic, abusive behavior is inside them and about what's going on internally for them, not about you and your worthiness. This is a really important distinction. If for instance you've been in a relationship or anything really in that matter, and no matter what you do, maybe a little bit of a shift happens and then it reverts back to how it was before, it's because the problem that you think you're trying to solve it's got nothing to do with you. It's got nothing to do with you, right? And so you're trying to solve something, making yourself the solution to somebody else's problem, particularly, and it's an internal problem. You're trying to prove yourself, breaking yourself, twisting yourself into a pretzel. But if you keep throwing yourself at something and nothing really shifts, or it only shifts temporarily and it reverts, it's because it's not about you. Yeah. That you're responsible for your emotional availability. You contorting yourself into a pretzel, trying really hard, this efforting, I call it, right? That is making it's buying into this idea that you can change somebody else's emotional availability, but you're responsible for yours and they're responsible for theirs. And water seeks its own level. So if you are encountering emotional unavailability, you can look at yourself and go, where do I need to open myself up a bit more? Where do I need to stretch and be a bit more honest? Am I avoiding intimacy in some way? It could be, yeah, you're there and you genuinely like this person, but you hide your needs in some way. If you want to be emotionally available or more emotionally available, because we're all humans, sometimes we shut down at times, we go through grief, difficulties, whatever, stress. But that means you're going to have to be honest about who you are. You're going to have to take care of your needs, desires, expectations, feelings, and opinions. And that doesn't mean you doing it all yourself. It means that you need to allow those to exist in your relationship. If you won't allow your needs to be seen, if you won't allow yourself to express how you truly feel, if you're always hiding stuff, if you're always like, okay, I'm going to play this role of being a Stepford housewife or whatever it is, or low maintenance, right? You will avoid intimacy. You will make yourself unavailable, and you don't need to do that, right? So you have to put the thing you want ahead of the thing that you're afraid of.
Okay, so one last question I've got for you, because I know someone listening to this right now, they've clicked on it because it's to do with being with unavailable people, people pleasing, and not being able to say no. So I know people who are listening to this are probably in all three, or at least probably two of those things.
Yeah.
So for someone that is currently stuck in a toxic relationship or an unavailable situationship, if it's just sex, if it's just unavailableness, what's the first step that you would encourage someone listening right now to take? Would it be to get a bit of paper out and to kind of get real with themselves? What would you suggest?
I think, and this applies really for addressing people pleasing and also addressing emotional unavailability or becoming more emotionally available. One, there are what I call the people pleaser feelings. So anxiety, resentment, overwhelm, feeling frustrated, burdened, helpless, powerless, victimized or low. Those feelings let you know that you are doing something for the wrong reasons. It could, for all intents and purposes, be a quote unquote good thing, but you're doing it for the wrong reasons, or the way in which you are going about it is harming your well being. So, taking the emotional unavailability piece, you need to think about the why here. Why? What's the why behind this? Why am I with this person? Or why am I in this relationship? Now, if you are in this relationship because it is a genuinely healthy, satisfying, fulfilling relationship, this is the person you actually like. You genuinely share, core values. There's a compatibility there. That why is going to be healthy. But if the why that comes up is like, well, some crumbs are better than no crumbs. Um, I'd rather be in a relationship. I'd hate to be back on the apps again. I don't want to have to start over. What will people think of me? I don't want this person to be with somebody else.
What about
What if he goes back to his ex?
this one? Oh, but they've got the potential. I can see the potential,
Yeah,
and I know that they can be someone good.
yeah, all of that. Your why is off, way off, right? It is not a healthy why to be in that relationship, right? And that why will send you down an entirely different track than when you have a healthy why. I say the same thing for people when they're like, oh, like I've started dating again. I'm not going to knock you for dating again. But when I see the wheels coming off and it's like you're losing your mind, I'm going to ask you about your why. And you say to me, well, I say, be honest, why are you back on the apps? Well, actually, I was kind of feeling like really sucky one day. I had a really, really stressful day at work. I saw that my ex on Insta that they had hooked up with somebody else. I don't know. I stood on the scale and I wasn't really feeling good about myself, or I was looking for validation, or I'm trying to escape something else. These are not healthy whys. They're not. And we are all guilty of it as humans, right? In everything we do, there is a why. And knowing why we're doing what we're doing helps us to enjoy more successful outcomes. When we are unaware of our why, we do stuff for dodgy reasons. Yeah. So for somebody who's listening to this, who's like, who's grappling with what we're talking about in this, recognize where those people pleaser feelings are showing up. If you can't recognize the feelings, which a lot of people struggle to do because they are so shut down, notice the thoughts. I'm not good enough. I need to try harder. If only. Or when you said about the potential, like, this, if you're talking about how somebody's got so much potential, it's because you're not okay with what they are right now. Yeah. Right?
Well,
You don't say that kind of stuff about a relationship where you're happy and secure. You don't. Another thing that you don't do, and I've said this to, people will say to me, "Oh, they're this, they're this, they're this." That like start just listing off all of this stuff. Let me tell you something. I've seen it many a time. When you are in a genuinely mutually fulfilling, loving, intimate relationship, you don't have some flipping breakdown list of all of the person's quote unquote good qualities. You're only listing off that stuff because it's this like something you're justifying to yourself underneath all of that stuff. When people are genuinely in that healthy, secure relationship, they don't have an item list of all of the reasons why they're in that relationship and all of the things that they like about that person because they're in it.
yeah.
And they've experienced in the mutual love, care, trust, and respect. And there is a profound understanding, an intimacy going on between them. When there's an insecurity in the relationship, when you maybe don't really have that much of the core values, that's when you start talking about, that like I like their friends and they've got all their teeth and I like their hair and they have a good job and this money and like we both like the same music and we get to no. When you listen off that kind of stuff, It ain't that deep. Your relationship is not that deep
I
yet.
think you have to question
You are
yourself if you're saying, oh, they've got all their teeth. I mean,
honestly,
level of standards, guys. Come on, let's put them up there a bit more.
I think particularly with Americans because they've got a kind of a thing about teeth and they slag the English about their teeth, which is not entirely unfounded, admittedly. But the American readers and listeners are often will be like, I've got all my teeth, got really good teeth. I'd be like, huh?
Wow,
Like
I've never heard
that's
that
not a
before.
thing. Yeah, and it's like, please, this isn't a thing. I mean, for maybe somewhere else, it might be like, oh, I've got all my hair, mate. It's not a, it's not a factor. So look at your why. If you can't notice the feelings, notice the thoughts. But I also, and this is the first step in the joy of saying no is I say for people to really get a sense of how they spend their yes, no's, and maybes. Now, this applies whether you are just looking at your people pleasing in general or whether you want to look at what's going on with the emotional unavailability. Spend a week just observing how you spend your yes, no's, and maybes. Now, the odds are that when you are emotionally unavailable, that you are swinging very high on the yeses and there's hardly any no's, or sometimes there's a lot of kind of resistance. So there is this, you say yes, and then you kind of passive aggressively extricate yourself out of stuff, right?
Mm.
But spend a week observing how you spend that, and you will see where the anxiety, all those sort of feelings show up. You'll see patterns showing up there. And when you observe, for instance, a relationship like that, noticing your feelings, noticing your thoughts, or just noticing what you're saying yes and no and maybe to, if there's anything in there, you will spot the dishonesty with yourself. You'll spot where you're avoiding intimacy. You'll spot where you're hiding your needs, and you will start to get an honest idea of why. Because there might be, for instance, with this person, it's like, I don't think that they can handle it. I don't think that if I tell them how I'm really feeling, that they can handle that. I don't think if I ask them to do this thing or I express this need, that they will actually follow through. We need to get honest with ourselves about this because then we can be like, actually, is that even really true? Like, even if it is, should that stop me from actually speaking up? Like, how is this relationship supposed to evolve if we're always going to be hiding away from having the honest conversations? There is, when people say to me, we never fight, we never argue, it's not a badge of honor, people. It's not a badge of honor because nobody agrees with each other all the time. I'm not saying conflict, all the time is a good thing, but conflict is a form of intimacy. It means you're willing to go there. It means you are willing to risk being seen, to express a potential difference. And when you learn how to navigate conflict in your relationship and come out the other side, you experience deeper intimacy. Now, obviously, if you're having a lot of conflict around the existence of your relationship or the fact that you want it to be a relationship and they want it to be a situationship or just nothing at all,
Mm.
then it's time to bow out. But if actually you're in a relationship and you like this person and because you like them, you're like, well, I can't be honest at all. You need to push yourself in that area and get honest with yourself. What about that's coming up, but also being honest with yourself about why. The fact that you've experienced issues in a previous relationship or your parents' relationship didn't work out or how your parents treat you, whatever it might be, you by acknowledging that that's showing up, the baggage behind it, I call it, it's like, what's the baggage behind it? Where else have I experienced these feelings, these thoughts, these behaviors? Helps you to see what's showing up. And then you can be like, oh, well, now I know what I can work with. Because then you can go and work with a therapist or a coach, or you can journal, do journal work or self work. You can be more mindful of it. But if you don't know what you're dealing with, you can't change it.
Yeah, and I think it's helpful to get a book. Like, I'm going to direct people to your website now because to get courses, books, or a therapist or a coach, because I think you really need someone that's emotionally detached from your life, someone that isn't going to be like the girls that go, oh, he probably will like you, give him time. You need someone that has no emotional attachment to your life, that can hear what you're saying, not tell you what to do, but give you guidance and, hey, do you think this is a healthy relationship? And just push someone in the right direction. And I think because you've got a few books there now up there, and you've got courses like where's the best place for someone to that they can get some more of your work?
Oh yeah, so baggagereclaim.com is my main website, and I have got my courses. My membership is actually about to reopen in the next week or so, called Reclaimed, and that includes courses like Break the Cycle of Emotional Unavailability and Reclaim Your Work Boundaries, but also just teaching you how to navigate and work through some of these blocks that we can have around being truly available to ourselves and to others. I've got my books on there. I've got my podcast, the Baggage Reclaim Sessions,
Mhm.
which has got, well, it's coming up to almost 290 episodes as well. And there's like 1,800 blog posts or something. There's a crazy amount of stuff on there. I think if you are struggling with emotional unavailability, then I would definitely read my book, Mr. Unavailable and the Fallback Girl. And even if you are, look, I wrote the book originally. Wow, it's a long time ago. I was just thinking about it. First wrote it in 2008 in the print, and then I rewrote it in 2011. So it's still like 14 years ago. And so even like I've had a lot of guys reading the book, but also a lot of people who are in same-sex relationships, read it. So if you really want to understand emotional unavailability and what's coming up for you, I would recommend that. But I also think if the themes of the people pleasing and emotional unavailability have been mainstays in your life, the joy of saying no, the last book I wrote, which was published by HarperCollins, I would, yeah, that's the one to go for, because that takes you on a deep dive. You'll understand what your people pleasing style is, and you will also get those steps of really learning how to say no. And it will make you, when you learn how to say no, you also learn how to say yes authentically, making you emotionally available for the love, care, trust, and respect that you need, desire, and deserve.
Mm. And if anyone reads any of your work, it's like you're talking to us now. Like how you've been talking on the podcast is
Yeah.
how you write. And that's what I found very I think even your work was the first anything that I ever read that was anything like this. Like I really think that you're like what's the word when someone paves the way? It's just literally
Oh, yeah. Somebody said to me actually recently about being a trailblazer,
thank you.
because yeah,
Yeah.
it would be one of the longest running sort of relationship self-help blogs in the world, because it's 20 in September. And so, and I see it now, like when people are like, I see some of the terms that I coin, like future faking
Yep,
and
love
fast
bombing.
forwarding. Yeah, yeah. And you see that now, and it's like, but I also see people riffing off it, and it's like, of course, this is what happens when you're early in, 20 years like going around. But yeah, I've been around a long time, and I've struggled to kind of think of another, but it will be one of the oldest relationship, dating, self-help blogs in the world. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. At the time I was looking. Yeah.
There wasn't anything really around like it.
No. No, and it's interesting because Mr. Unavailable and the Fallback Girl, when I bought that and picked it up, without even reading it, Fallback Girl, I'd never heard that term before. And I was like, oh, yeah, you almost know you are. But even just having your book and just looking at the title, I was like, that's me. I'm
Yeah.
Barbara will always be there. I can do anything to her and she'll always be there. And that's right. We are the Fallback Girls. We are the Fallback Kids. And I just
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
begin to thank you. This is why I just cannot believe, like, I've moved to Australia too, so I'm not even in the same country. I'm in a different country. I have a podcast and I'm talking to you, and you were the beginning part of this very tough chunk from my early 30s to now my mid 40s. That we're going good now, but it
Yeah.
was a very long, dark, hard period of my life, and you were that first person, and your voice was so comforting. And yeah, so I just want to this conversation is such a beautiful conversation, and you change lives, and look, even after 20 years, you're continuing to change life. And I know that you bring your life, whether it's being a mum or, all the stuff that you've been through in your life, you just so effortlessly put it into your blogs. And that makes you so special because you're so genuine. Because now, 20 years later, the type of coaches and people that do your work, a lot of them aren't genuine. A lot of
I
them
know,
say they're doing the work or whatever, and that's everything in life. Like,
of course.
you get nice car salesmen, bad car salesmen, nice real estate agents, all the same.
Yeah.
But what I love about you is, from my end, it feels like it's so, I know it's not, because I self-disclose, I share a bit of my life too. That's why people work with me. That's why people like to work with me, because they know I can relate.
Hmm.
And I feel like me reflecting back, looking at all your work and you being that first person. I still remember reading your book going, whoa, she's sharing her life with me in this book. And you're open to
Yeah.
sharing that with you. And that is such a gift that you give us. It's such a gift that you continue, even 20 years later, you're still changing people's lives.
Thank you so much, Barbara. I mean, I feel really grateful to have this conversation with you today. You have no idea. And I'm grateful to not just have had this conversation, but to have been part of that journey with you earlier on. And also grateful to people like you who take those experiences, like the way I took my experiences, and you channel that into something really great. And look at you now. Like, you should be really, really, really proud of yourself and thank all the younger versions of you for helping you get here.
It's very jarring though, because when you look back, it makes me sad sometimes. I don't know if you ever, in a good way, I reflect back and I just feel so sorry for that Barbara, because for someone that's so, and I don't know if anyone can relate to this, I'm strong, I'm smart, I'm very strong, and I'm very smart, and I don't take shit from anybody. But in that area of my life, oh, I'm a doormat, walk all over me, let's go.
Yeah.
So that,
Yeah, it was wild.
yeah, and so interesting when I reflect back, but that's okay now, because I just help so many, my gift is through my vulnerability, like you are, that at the time it was my life and it was so normal, and it's scary
Hmm.
how normal it can be and how normal it can feel, and how inside it's debilitating, and the overthinking is just chronic. We didn't even touch on the overthinking today, but these unavailable guys, just that's my experience. You replay, because we're so smart. I could replay a whole conversation I would have with a guy in a night throughout the whole night, trying to analyze and understand his tone
Hmm.
and for fuck's sake, Barbara, he just doesn't like you. Just
Yeah.
walk
FBI
away.
agents. Yeah. Yeah. The forensic analysis. I've been there, done that. And I think for anyone listening, I hope that each of us really are able to show you that things do move on. That it is okay to let go, and it will also feel hard, and you can't see it at the time, but things will move on. We have both moved on dramatically from those periods of life. We're still navigating stuff, of course, we'll always be
Yeah.
working through stuff. But I hope that each of us show everybody who's listened that,
Yeah, and the guy that
it can.
the guy or the girl you think you'll never get over, I'm laughing.
You will.
Because
Believe me,
there
you
are a
will.
couple there that I thought, oh my God, I'm never going to. And now it's just laughable. So I just want to say, from across the other side of the world, thank you so much for just taking your time. And I'm just so honored that you're so approachable. And I just sent you a DM and you messaged me back. And that's what I love about you. Is it was just so personal. You could have had an assistant message me back. You could have had one of your publishers message me back, but it was you. And that's what I mean. What you do is just a long-standing, just thank you. And it doesn't feel enough to say thank you, but it's cool, because now what I'm doing is I'm introducing my clients to your work, and people that are listening. I've got listeners from all over the world. Like, it's bizarre when I download. the countries of the world that you guys are listening to, I'm like, okay, that's cool. I don't know many people in America. Like I've got Australia, and America is my hot second, and then UK is my third. Then New Zealand, my
Yeah.
home country, is four. And then I'll have like Ireland and Dubai and India and like Switzerland and all these different countries. So I know that people around the world listen to this. And this is so cool that I'm introducing you. You're such an integral part of my life, but now I guarantee you're going to be an integral part of, it's like a reminder, now I can share your book with my clients. I'm going to have your book in my studio and I can share it with my clients and help them. So it's almost like meeting you and having this refresh. It's like, oh my gosh, this is whole catalog of work of your beautiful story and your work that I can just share with my clients.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm actually already looking forward to listening back to our episode and sharing it as well.
Yeah, thank you. You change lives. Thank you for being you. And as us females, that when we've done the work, us being vulnerable and authentic allows other people to be authentic. So I love that you're so real and authentic because you give other people permission just to be themselves.
Thank you. Honestly, I felt very, very touched today. It's exactly what I've needed. Thank you.
Yeah. The 31-year-old Barbara is going, holy shit, I've just walked out of a divorce. I've just walked out of a divorce. And do you know, in another few years, you're going to be living in a different country on a Friday night doing a podcast with this amazing woman. So you've blown my mind tonight. It is just awesome. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. I hope this conversation has added value to your self-care journey and inspired positive changes in your life. If you enjoyed this episode, consider sharing it with a friend who might benefit from this episode. Don't forget to subscribe on Spotify or on your favorite podcast platform to stay up to date on future episodes. Your support means the world to me. I genuinely love hearing from you, so please take a moment to leave a review. Let me know which part of today's episode resonated with you the most. Your feedback guides the direction of this podcast, and I really appreciate each and every single one of you for being a part of this community. To fall in love with yourself is the first secret to happiness. To find out a bit more about the Studio Chat podcast, head over to my Instagram page, Studio Chat Podcast, or if you want to find out a bit more about my counselling private practice, head over to Instagram on self_care_studio. I'm really looking forward to seeing you on the next episode. Until next time, take care of yourselves and keep embracing the journey of self-discovery.